name is Matt Carter. We are at the bus fair. This is my rig, 1997 Bluebird, and this is my space. I've had this bus for 3 years now and bought it to build it out as a workshop space, and then time just turned into me living in the thing, and it's been pretty badass. So yeah, so this space, originally I built this to be a storefront space. I was gonna set this up, have knives on display and have countertops, and then have wood stove and a hangout space. And a buddy of mine, Jeff, he helped me build these cabinets in the drawers. We put it together, and it just ended up so nice that I was like, this is just too beautiful. And then life kind of throws curveballs at you. I never planned to live in it when I bought it, and I love living in it. I just started living in it and made it work. Housing around Central Oregon is really expensive, and so it was just kind of a good way to find a piece of land to park this and use it as a home. Yeah. So these countertops are Ponderosa that I milled with my Alaskan mill, and then put them here on the counters. So really, I have finished product in this drawer. I'll work on knives and I'll stash them in this drawer, and then, you know, I just keep food. I'll keep chips and things in the drawers, and you know, I have a refrigerator that I tucked under. I thought it'd be nice to tuck the refrigerator underneath the slab countertops. So if I'm not at a show, like right now I'm at the bus fair, and people are going to be walking through checking out everybody's spaces and buses, and so I'll put knives on display, clean up my kitchen area, make it look more presentable than, say, I'm 3 days in on a workbench and the place isn't necessarily as nice when you're living out of it and working out of the back half. Yeah, my cooking situation, I just kept this real simple. I didn't, you know, build in anything. I just got a camp chef and a small propane. And I just cook right up top of here. I'm cast iron skillets and enamel cast iron all the way, and so I'll just fire this bad boy up, and she burns and cooks pretty well. And then, you know, I'll use my cutting board and then prep and cook area right here. It works pretty well. I designed it to put a sink in here. You know, everyone's got a project still, and you know, I was going to put a bigger sink in this space, and I just haven't got to that yet. I'm actually planning on running water and having tanks on the underside and having a water heater. I just, it's one penny at a time. You know, we are all just spending our money and slowly working on what we own. So that's definitely the next step, is to get running water in here. You know, I've had the thing 3 years. I still don't have running water in the bus, but however, I make it work. Honestly, I would not change a single thing. I would put a bigger sink. Originally, this was the one I'm going to put. When I do run water, I'm going to put a bigger sink in the space. I really love the openness here. When I designed it in my brain, it was to have a whole walk, be able to walk all the way down the center of the bus. I like symmetry, and I thought multiple people can fit in this space. You know, 3 people can be standing right here. I can fit a couple people here, a couple people here, and 8 people can be in this thing. It's not comfortable, but they can be in here. I just put a little eating table here. This is just another slab I milled. It doesn't fold down or anything. These are 2 caribou hides that were shot on the Aleutian Islands off of Alaska. A buddy of mine shot them, and he cooked them. He was a chef on a research vessel, and cooked them up for the folks working on the boat. This is a futon pull out. So, you know, I'm just a bachelor living in a bus, so a lot of times I'll just leave this pushed in and sleep on it like that. I went with a full-size wood stove because I love splitting wood and bucking, and I go out in the fall and do firewood and give firewood away. It's just, I love chainsaws, and I love being in the woods, and I love the smell of wood. So I just went for a full-size wood stove. What I did, I actually found this wood stove on Craigslist, and then decided not to buy it because I take my time deciding on if I want something or not. So I'll go look at something, I don't know, think about it, and then I contacted him a week later and thought, that's the perfect wood stove, I'll go pick that up. And then he had already sold it. And so Home Depot carries this wood stove, and how I got a deal on it is I Black Friday'd. Home Depot will price match. This is a really good information, actually. Home Depot will price match anything if they carry it in their store. So I found on Black Friday some company out east, you know, I'm in Central Oregon, so some company out in Maine or something carried this wood stove, and this was an $800 new wood stove, and they had it on Black Friday for $400. So I called up Home Depot and said, hey, will you price match this wood stove? And she goes, okay, let me see. And she pulls up the website and sees it's $400, and she goes, all right, $400, great. And they shipped it to Home Depot, and I just pick it up, throw it in your truck, and bring it and load it in the side door. And then, yeah, I do the side door for the wood loading. I always thought in an emergency, if something's happening with the fire, I can just chuck anything right out the side door, which is really great and is key, I think. And it works for loading and unloading firewood. I just have a bin under my bed, and it's just a plastic pull-out. I never built a wooden. I just use it works, and I'll just keep t-shirts and socks and underwear under the bed. I just use a 5-gallon jug right now. I haven't, like I said, haven't done the system yet, and it works. I'll use a little 2-gallon Lowe's bucket, and that'll be my gray water, and then I'll use that to water my garden plants, my gray water. I wired up the whole back of the shop. It's a 20 amp system, and the back of the shop is really rigged for most of the electric, and then I just ran electric up this one side of the bus. I figured I was going to put the wood stove here, and I've got the door here, and I just didn't really care to wire electric on this side. It didn't need it, and it works. I haven't had an issue. I just plug in to a 15 amp, and I'm good to go. Yeah, I got Rue's dog bed down here. I just kind of put this here for my wool Pendletons and things like that, and Woolrich and pants, and then yeah, and then it transitions into my shop space, which I was gonna put a door here, but I just have a tapestry, and these are magnets, and I've got a magnet roof, and I can just kind of easily enough while I'm working, I'll just tarp the whole thing off so steel shavings and wood chips don't get anywhere or anything like that. And then the same concept with the shop space as the front. I just kept the middle open. You know, when you're in a shop space, you're constantly over here, you're constantly over here. You know, I've actually done a couple, what are the videos called, where they time lapse you working, and it's literally, it's hilarious. You're just kind of like, tink, 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 and then you zoom over, you're tink, 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 tink. That's always fun. So knife making is actually, I always try and stress people. I bring people into my shop, in my space, and they're interested in making knives. And so I always say, you know, come on in, I'll show you what I know. I'll let you see the tools that I have. And what I really push people to know, and what I say to people when they're in here, when they're interested about knives, is to pay attention as I walk you through the process of knife from beginning to end. Pay attention to the tools that we're using for each step, okay? And there's very minimal tools, and you don't have to have a lot of the things that I have, right? You use a bench grinder, you use an angle grinder, you use a drill press. And you know, before I owned a drill press, I would just use a hand drill, you know, put something in the vise and just kind of and punch through stuff with your drill bits. I've used this space to make knives from beginning to end when I started, and now I'm parked next to an old barn, and I have barn stalls, so I have my forge is in the barn, and anvil, and if I'm doing any really messy woodwork that's just going to be, I'm just covered in dust, I'll go to the barn so it stays outside. But when I started, I would do it all in here. The main area, if you look on the floor, the main area where I'm doing work is right here. So I'm standing over my vise, and I've got blades in my vise working, and you can tell that the floor is just worked right here. I've spent hours and hours standing right here with this tool, you know, doing all kinds of stuff. So we've got our drill press right here. This is hilarious. There's one really great thing about the drill presses is it's too tall, but I got a great deal on the drill press. It's too tall, so I had to cut a hole through the floor, and the base of the drill press is under the workbench, and I've got a jack under here that holds it up, and I've got 2 bolts through bolted through the table. that's probably my favorite thing about this workshop. And then this, I just have a little toolbox here. This keeps, you know, brass tubing for pins in the knives, brass rod, all kinds of stuff over here. I've got copper for just accents in the wood, whether it's a guard or a bolster. Just kind of the fine materials, liners, you know, I've got navy liners that I'll keep in the toolbox. Couple bench grinders. This is a buffing wheel that's got wax. You'll kick this guy on, put wax on the buffing wheel, and then I use it for my leather. I'll hone the edges with wax on my leather sheaths. Bench grinder here will do the profile of the knife. So we've got a bigger Bowie size knife right here. Say there's difference, there's forging a knife on the anvil and hammering and shaping and working a knife out. And then there's a stock removal, it's called, and you're taking a bar like this and you're pulling the shape of the knife out of the bar and profiling, right? And so that is done on a bench. This is how I do it. People can use belt grinders, different systems, but my system obviously is this. And I'll kick this guy on and I'll shape the profile out. And then this bench grinder has the buffing wheel with buffing compound for steel and just another stone wheel. So I'll shape my blade out of this, and then I'll come over here to my bench vise and I'll put my blade in the bench vise, and I'll take my angle grinder with a stone grinding wheel, right? And I'll take this guy with the stone wheel and I'll grind my bevels in the knives. A lot of guys use 2x72 belt grinders, 3 horsepower multi-speed. I just learned with an angle grinder, and it's how I've always done it, and I've really honed in on it. Yes, I want a 2x72. I haven't bought one. I'll get one of these days, just slowly. I've got my system and it works. So I'll grind a bevel in the knife with my angle grinder, and then I'll come bring the knife, I'll have the bevel in, and then I'll heat treat the steel. So once you grind the bevel, you thin the taper out, and you can see this is a kitchen knife I was working on. You know, this guy has no bevel. He's as thick all the way through. And then this guy I've started grinding on to put my bevel on this kitchen knife, right? So once I'm full on, the bevel is completely ground, tapered off, or 70-80% ground. We have to heat treat, harden the steel because the steel's soft when you're working on it. And what I have is oxyacetylene over here and a torch. A lot of guys have kilns or heat treating ovens. I just have a torch set up and then proper oil quenching. I use high carbon steel, which is an oil quench. So again, like I said, this is where I stand all the time. I'll just put the knife in the vise, take my torch. I don't have anything hooked up right now because we're at the bus fair. Take the torch and I'll just fire up the cutting edge on that knife. You can tell that it's the pipe temperature. 1084 is heated up to like 1550 degrees, which is non-magnetic. You go just above non-magnetic. So I keep a little magnet here, magneted to the bus. Love it. And then I'll just test. The steel gets red hot and I'll make sure I'm non-magnetic to the edge, and then I'll come over here and do an oil quench and harden the steel. So once the steel's been hardened and tempered and to the proper hardness we want and finished, we'll take and we'll drill holes in the handle. We have to put, I don't have all of the setup, I don't have knives in process right now, but then we'll drill holes in the handle and we'll figure out what wood we want, right? Like here's a manzanita burl. We'll take this and we'll bandsaw. I buy big chunks of burl wood, and then we'll bandsaw them down. Like this is an ironwood burl. We'll bandsaw it up into scales, and then it gets fit and epoxied to the handle, right? And so you do a 2-part epoxy, marine grade. The handle has holes and pins through the handle, right? So we drill our hole through the steel, drill our hole through the wood. This gets epoxied and it sets overnight for 12 hours. And then the next day I've got this mongoloid block on the end of the knife. So the knife is hardened, the bevel is ground, and now we're just doing the finish work on the handle. Then we'll take the knife, we'll put the knife back in the vise. Here we are back on the bench. And we'll put the knife in the vise and we'll move over. You know, our wood is rough shaped, and we've got this mongoloid that I rough shape by hand with the grinder. And then I'll come back over and I'll take 120 grit sandpaper and I'll just slowly start working in my handle, right? Like this, more fine work with the sandpaper. I'll work from 120 to 220 to 320, and then I call it good at 320. And at that point, you know, handle's done. 320, I'll take it over here. I've got wood oil. You know, you can't see what this is, but this is cutting board oil, and I'll oil up the wood. So then we move over to leather. So we've got our knife shaped, and we'll cut out, we'll start working a custom sheath. We'll cut out the shape of the sheath that fits the knife, you know, glue it, and then hand stitch it with thread. And then so each sheath is custom stitched to each knife. Once the sheath is done, we put a cutting edge on the knife because it's done. We sign it. That's it. We're done. And you got a knife. So I just have a couple general toolboxes with wrenches and a couple other stuff in here. That's hammers and things. This is just a small project box. Like this is a giant maple burl. And then this gets bandsawed and into chunks, and I'm making butter knives out of the burl wood, which I have up front. And then I just kind of keep stuff down here. This milk crate, I keep leather that I'm working on. That's okay size down here. This paper I use to cut the shape the sheaths in paper. Like, so you'll take that paper and you'll draw out your sheath before you actually cut leather, and you get a rough shape of what you want the sheath to be before you move to the leather step. And then this drawer is just, I kind of threw, since we drove down the road yesterday, I threw a bunch of shit in these drawers just to shove it all away. But that's just kind of how it is. If you're ever driving this thing, you take everything, shove it in drawers. But my top drawer, I've just got things like my tape, you know, scuffing material. I've got different things for the angle grinder. I've got cut-off wheels, more grinding things. Different project. I'm supposed to make a pair of gun grips for my buddy's revolver. He's frustrated because it's been a couple months. I haven't quite made them yet. Yeah, so then I work my way. I've got like Dremel bits, pieces of Dremel in here. These I just normally have up in the window because they're badass. A buddy of mine gave these to me. Get the most out of your drill press. Getting the most out of your bandsaw and scroll saw. And so I'll put them up like that. I keep older knives I've made in here that I quit carrying. This is one of my favorite knives. I'm from northern Michigan. My great uncle Jack is up there, and he's with stone as a lapidary, and he cut me 2 Petoskey stones. So he cut me stone into 2 scales. Right? And so I went over to my great uncle Jack's house and worked with him. He's 84 at the time, and then he cut me stone. And then I fit and made 3 stone-handled knives for my first time ever. And got to hang out and work with my mean old Uncle Jack. When I was a kid, he was mean old Uncle Jack. And then now he's actually a big sweetie. So I keep that in here in my workbench because it's one of my favorites. I'll kind of work down the line. This is some of the welding stuff. Torch. It's not the most organized because we just drove to the bus fair yesterday. Steel. So I've got some rough-shaped pieces of steel that I will use later. And here is just kind of epoxy, you know, more blue shop towels. You'll go through these, just be shameless about it and use these and just use them all you want. Yeah, these 3 drawers are knife scales, all 3 of these. So this is wood that I've processed down from a chunk like this, which down over here, if you look down over here, I've got other pieces of chunk that need to get, this is manzanita burls. So I bought a big manzanita, chainsawed it, and then bandsawed it into chunks. So I'll take big chunks like that and process them down into these scales. And then they're all kind of organized and set for what they are. And then so when I get a knife finished and heat treated and the bevel's done and I gotta pick out my handle, you'll find me spending time over here going, oh, which one, what knife is that supposed to be? Yeah, so I have deer antler, I make antler handled knives, all kinds of wood. I like more burl, high figured stuff. And then this one's just kind of general storage, just some shit, some sprays, different things. These are LED lights. So I just bought a light string. The lights, it was hard to find them that they don't dangle down. I wanted them up snug. I have LED lights in the front and then LED in the back. Yeah, just to suck as little power. Each bulb is something like 5 watts, 5 watts. So, 20 years ago, you weren't going to get away with that, but nowadays we can. I got this specifically because the 12 valve Cummins that's in the motor, that's in the bus. And that was all I really cared about, is I wanted the 12 valve Cummins. It's the most widely distributed diesel in America. You break down anywhere, then you can pretty much find any diesel mechanic to work on it. Or backcountry redneck who's going to be like, oh yeah, I got 2, 3 of them in the shop. I've owned 2 or 3 of them. We can look at it. So that was kind of the idea behind getting the Cummins diesel. What's my miles per gallon in this motor? I actually have not driven this so much. It's been my workshop and I've not actually logged the miles on the Cummins. So I've been told it's 10 to 12 miles to the gallon. I mostly just stay put, yes. I'm parked in Central Oregon around Bend. And how I set the rig up was it's a shop space and I run power tools, bandsaw, bench grinder, angle grinder, and I don't quite have, solar, and generator isn't going to quite pull electric, so I just hook up to the house that I'm parked at the time. Yeah, these are just maps around Central Oregon. We've got the Eugene area and the Willamette National Forest. And these are just maps that I had, and then this is insulation, rigid foam insulation, and then I just wrapped the rigid foam in maps and I just stick it in my windows, just kind of wherever you're parked. No one can see through the front, and I just love maps. I collect maps, I care about them, and I just thought it'd be a fun way to keep the front up. And then I always decorate my dash. This is my 1950 Winchester 3030 that I hunt with in the fall. Yeah, these are sheds. This is a shed that was found, and then this is actually, I went to Columbia in the spring, this past spring, and a fellow there gave me this one. So this is a Columbian antler from one of their deer, and I just brought it back. So he knew I made knives and gave it to me as a gift. The bus is fun as hell to drive. Every time I fire this thing up and I start driving down the road, I'm just like, oh yeah, this thing's fun. And you look down the side of it and you're just like, holy shit, I got 36 feet behind me. So that always gets me. My name is Matt Carter. My business name is Carter Knife Co. I'm located in Bend, Oregon. You can find my knives if you search Carter Knife Co. on the internet. I have a website, carterknifeco.com. You can find my Instagram at Carter Knife Co. Carter Knife Co. Carter Knife Co. Carter Knife Co. I want to thank Tiny Bus Tours for putting this on and coming through and filming me and doing this and promoting my work and my business. That kind of stuff goes a long way for small business owners. Take a look at my knives, contact me, we can build you a custom knife. I've got knives available I can show you. Yeah, thanks for the time. Thanks for coming in.